Jez has been working in the background on this material and his whole approach to online presentations for the last year, way before all the chaos has hit us. So you are not getting stuff that is thrown together at the last minute. This is crafted, and he's been testing this with groups of people online over the last year. So Jez, we're delighted that you're taking time to share with us this morning, and we look forward to making the most of the information you're about to present to us.
So congratulations, first of all. You are working from home, hashtag working from home. You are working remotely, and it's all going swimmingly. You're sorted, aren't you? The platform is installed. Zoom, maybe, the platform we're working on this morning. Or maybe your office has given you Microsoft Teams and you're working on Microsoft Teams, or Blue Jeans. A plethora of platforms that you can use to communicate with your clients. And of course, you're all prepared now. You are ready to pick up the threads from the professional communications that you've been used to having with your clients to date. You're ready to go. It's what you're used to doing. It's in your blood. It's in your genes. You know how to do this stuff. After all, you've been talking to clients for years, haven't you? And of course, you've been on the tutorial, maybe last week, maybe a little while ago. You know how to press the buttons. You work out what to do on the platform that you're on. So it's a cinch. Job done. Or is it? Or is it? How do you show up on screen? How do you want to show up on screen? What's the experience of your client? Because that's what it's all about, isn't it? How does your client experience the conversation with you when you are now on screen as part of this platform? And why on earth does it matter in the first place? Let's deal with that last one first, actually, because that's quite interesting. Why does it matter? You and I, we live in a transmedia bubble. We are surrounded by marketing, by advertising all the time. It's thrust at us through every medium. It's on your Facebook, it's on your phone, it's on the TV. Now, you may well stand back and say, actually, no, okay, I can deal with all that. I know how adverts work. You can't sell me anything. I can't be bothered. But actually, you are at that moment surrounded by a very professional communication medium. So whether you like adverts or not, and most of us probably don't and try and record separately so that we can cut them out, the fact is we are used to, the norm for us is a very professional communication medium. We're used to things being pretty well presented, pretty well slick. There is a risk that actually goes wrong. There is a risk for us when we're presenting on screen that there is a mismatch with the client, that actually they can be disappointed without necessarily being able to put their finger on it. Being able to say, oh, this didn't work. There's just that feeling that it didn't actually work. It didn't go as well as it could have done. And you may be feeling the same your side of the screen. So in this short session, we're just going to go through three practical areas, three fundamental areas that, with a little tweaking here and there by your side of the screen, you can make it work for your client, and you can make it so that you come across more professionally. So what we're going to cover is visuals, voice, and Voldemort. I will explain the Voldemort, I promise. So let's look at the visuals first, shall we? Think of that client meeting that you normally have, the preparation that you do for it, the cues of how it works, of how you greet that client. You probably don't even have to think about it other than now when I'm asking you to think about it. When you walk up to your office door to greet your client, when you walk to their front door and ring on the bell, when you meet in a remote location or a physical location to actually talk, everything you do with that client is pretty automatic. And the way that you engage with them, with your eyes, visually, is again, pretty automatic. You don't have to think about looking at your client and make sure you've got their attention. the social norms of actually looking away from time to time, so not looking so intense. The way that you look at your client in day-to-day life, in business life, is just totally automatic for you. So what's the difference between doing it this way? Think for a moment of a beautiful sunny weekend, a beautiful sunny day where you've been out with friends and family, and someone says, oh yeah, we've got to take a picture of this, we've got to take a snap. So you'll huddle together, someone gets out their phone and cheese, and takes a photo. And when you look at that photo afterwards, there was a sense that maybe everyone wasn't quite engaged. The automatic thing that we tend to do when someone puts a screen in front of us to take a photo on a camera is we look at the screen instead of the camera on the phone. It's just an instinctive thing to do. That's where we look. You may be saying, I know all this, Jez. I'm pretty clued up with you. When someone takes a photo of me on the camera, I'm pretty used to it. I will definitely look for that tiny little camera on the end of that phone, and I will make sure that I come across well. Okay, that's now a norm for you because we've been having those photos taken for a long time on mobile devices. But now you're on screen on a platform like this. What's the instinctive reaction? How often, maybe last week, have you been using something like Zoom, something like Microsoft Teams, and without thinking about it, what you've done is look at the client's face on screen, because that's what's engaging you. That's what you want to look at. Your instinctive reaction when you see a face is to look at it. And I sense that now there's this feeling of disengagement in the room already, simply because I am not looking at you. I'm looking at that client via the screen here. I'm looking at you on the screen. And what I have to remember to do, and this is the new norm for us, this is the new world with these platforms, is remember to engage by looking at the camera, looking at the webcam. Now, you may be fortunate. You may have a laptop or a screen where the camera actually sits nicely in the middle because that's the technology that's provided for you, or you are the consummate professional and on your big remote screen, you set your webcam up on a little tripod so it sits in the middle so that you can achieve both. You can look at the face of your client and also look at the camera as well. For many of us, me included, that is not the case. My webcam sits just on top of the laptop. So I have to make an effort. I have to remember not to do this, but actually to look up at the camera and get their engagement that way. It's going to feel slightly odd because it's not the norm. But with everything that we're covering this morning, please look at it from the client perspective. Make your new norm engaging with the client via the screen by using the camera. So tip number one, and I know it's so fundamental, and you're thinking, Jez, I know this already, but the number of conversations I've had last week with consummate professionals like yourself who've gone, oh, I really should have done that. Just remember to make it the norm now to look at that camera. Okay, so that's visuals. Now let's flip to voice. Again, you're a professional. Think of the preparation that you do for meeting the client in the room. All the little signals when you are physically in the room ready to meet the client that set you up for it. You have papers neatly sorted on the desk, you've got a few notes, you've prepped what you're going to do, you've made sure everything is nice and neat and tidy. You walk to that door to meet them, you greet them at their door, even when you're on the phone to them, and I'll lay odds that you put on your professional meeting game face. What you do, without thinking about it, is you put a great big smile on to welcome them. Of course you do, it's perfectly natural. But now you're on screen. So flip it to what you are doing this week. It's an early morning call. It's a cold, chilly morning. You're preparing for that call with your client. the chances are you've not said a word to anyone since last night. You're on your own. It's just you in that room. There's no one to talk to. In fact, yeah, you almost feel like breaking into song, don't you? No one to talk to, all by myself. Yeah, we do daft things when we're on our own in the room. But the reality is you do not have the signals that normally set things up for you to present professionally to your client when you meet them with a smile. You would automatically give them that great big grin, and that signal to make that happen isn't there. So what happens on that early morning call? You're 2 minutes in. Number one, you just had that, excuse me. Yeah, I've got it. Sorry, one moment. I've just got to take a glass of water. That frog in the throat thing, well, we can deal with that in later sessions because there's so much we can do to prepare for that. But the other, perhaps more crucial thing for this session is that sense of engagement. Smiling. What's the connection between smiling and engagement? Two things. Firstly, from your evolution, from when you emerge from the savannah, you have always smiled at your fellow man or woman or business client when you met them for the first time. You are hardwired to give them a great big smile and a nice big grin because that's part of evolution and greeting people. The other element to it, and I know that fellow singers will be nodding violently with this when I describe it, is when you smile, it lifts the soft palate at the back of your throat. Now, if any of you sing, so many colleagues in choral societies, in rock choirs, the MD is constantly encouraging you to smile. Of course, he wants a great big grin, cheerful choir to appeal to the audience. But the other reason he's asking you to do that is because the conductor knows that when you smile, it lifts that soft palate and it makes your voice a fraction warmer, a fraction more engaging. You know, not incredibly dramatic, but enough for your human ears to pick up the difference between that early morning, I really haven't had my coffee voice yet, and a warm, engaging one. Prove it to yourself. After this session, grab your phone, get to the record. You don't need visuals for this, just to get to the record for the audio, and put on your early morning. Have not yet had a cup of coffee, not spoken to anyone other than the cat or the dog. I'm pretty miserable. And just record something, just a minute or two, just for the sake of doing it. Stop. Re-record and set yourself up. Put on your game face for meeting with your client and put on the biggest Cheshire cat grin you can possibly imagine. Okay, maybe you wouldn't do that when meeting a client for the first time, but when you're recording, if you put on a great big Cheshire cat grin, the sound is just a fraction richer and a fraction warmer. And I promise you, if you do those two recordings for yourself, I can almost guarantee that even you will hear the difference in your voice. With the caveat that none of us like hearing our own voice. We prefer to listen to others. But just listen to the difference between those two recordings and put yourself into the shoes of your client. Which voice would you rather hear? Deadpan, early morning, pretty severe. Or actually, you know, I'm ready to engage with you. So tip number 2, deliberately smile. Before you press the button to put your face on screen and get the audio working, deliberately put a smile on. Prep in your notes. I really need to smile. So we've covered visuals, we've covered voice. Let's finish with Voldemort. What do I mean by that? I actually mean flipping the Voldemort effect, which I will explain. Back to your meeting again. You are the consummate professional. You prepare for everything down to the last dot on the paper. I used to be a bank manager dealing with high net worth clients. And for me, the preparation for the meeting, whether I was going to their office or particularly if they were coming to mine, was really important. You match You match your dress to the client. That's what we do. You match the venue to the client. Where do they like to meet? What's the circumstances they like to meet? And if it's your office, it's pretty well neat and tidy. If it's their front room, if it's their office, you know you're going to go into a professional environment. That's what you do as a professional, meeting people. But now you are on screen. What happens if the room that you go into, the setting you go into, is this? What happens if the expectations that you're setting your client have now been dramatically changed? And perhaps you don't even realize it. Now, I may be doing you a complete disservice. I know that your office is nothing like this at all, but this could be the extreme. It comes down to the little details. When you set up your office for the client for the meeting, you make sure that all the papers around you are neatly filed and stacked away, or put away if they're confidential. You make sure it's neat and tidy and clean and professional. So why not look at this from the client perspective? When this session is finished, stand up from your nice comfortable chair where in front of you everything is neat and tidy, and walk round to the other side of the desk, or if it's close to a window, as close to the other side as you can get. Take a look at what your client is seeing. What's in the background? What's distracting in the background? What is unprofessional in the background? When meeting with clients, the chances are in the old days, I even knew what biscuits they liked and would prepare for that. But is actually the client seeing a half-eaten digestive with your morning coffee cup that you just accidentally put down and forgot to move out of the way? Having checked it out from physically looking at it, now come back to your desk, flip up Zoom, and open a new meeting room where no one's at risk of joining you, just you, and just take a look around the screen. Just see what you are going to do about your room, so that the client does not see this particular style of room, but actually see something that looks professional, that looks interesting, that looks welcoming. So what did I mean by flipping the Voldemort effect? Why am I bringing Harry Potter's He Who Shall Not Be Named into a session on presenting on screen? If we flip the statement, he who must not be named, we could create he who or she who must be named. Why shouldn't you be the person that your client does remember and does name, because you took the time to prepare for the environment? They're going to be left with a whole sense of emotions and feelings, because most of their meetings now are going to be on screen, virtually, like this. Just as you try to create the good impression in the room for your client, now think about it from your client's perspective. You are in a virtual room with your client. Why shouldn't you be the one who must be remembered, because you are now the one that engaged with them visually, because you checked with them, you looked at them in the screen, you got their engagement. You engage them with your voice because you remembered to smile, and they're going to love you for that. And last but not least, you flipped the Voldemort effect. You are remembered because you prepared the virtual room with the same professionalism as you will prepare the real room. So 3 key elements there. And what I will do now, with your permission, is introduce you to quite a neat element of Zoom. In a moment, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, David Henson, who is going to put you into breakout rooms. Zoom enables you to not just stay in one big room together, but actually divide up in 2s or 3s, or as many numbers as you like, to actually have off-room conversations and then come back again. So for 5 minutes, in a moment when I hand back to David, you are suddenly going to find on screen there's only 2 or 3 faces that appear. What I'd invite you to do in just 5 minutes, if I may, I know we could spend all day on this, but just 5 minutes, is just to talk with your colleagues and look at 2 things. A, what are your experiences of working virtually and what from today works for you? But also with this environment, working on platforms, what would you like to explore going forward? What would you like to be part of workshops coming up, helping you with present on screen? And what I suggest is just put your thoughts into the chat room. It's a nice store for everything. So with that, I'm now going to hand over to the next 5 minutes to my colleague, David Henson.
Thank you very much, Jez. So as Jez said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up some breakout rooms. And we agreed that we were going to try and get about 3 people in each breakout room. And there are 21 of us, which is divisible by 3. Trouble is, it doesn't put me into the breakout room as a host, but I'm going to set up 7 breakout rooms and set it to automatic. So you will end up with 1 or 2 other random people in the breakout room for the next 5 minutes. So I'm now going to create the room. And please chat away and I will get you back here in 5 minutes. The breakout rooms will be closed in about 5 seconds, so everyone should suddenly appear back on the screen again.
That'll be brilliant.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
There we go. Everyone's back in the main room now, so I'm going to hand over to my colleague Jonathan to deal with the Q&A.
Thank you very much, David. And first of all, thank you very much for the high levels of engagement before and during, and also in the breakout room that I had the pleasure and privilege of being in. So just some affirmations and feedback. First of all, Richard loves Richard M, that is, loves your green screen. Susie was very minded to thank you for putting this session on. And we've not been without people actually sharing their tips as well as questions. So Bryony, when you answer her question, you might want to acknowledge her tip, which is around the fact that Skype is quite a nice feature because it blurs. So maybe you can cover that as well. Right, okay, so the first question, and Fiona Brennan-Scott was asking, and also Lucia chimed in here as well, and I think Karen also had a question very similar to this. How the blazes are you changing all of those backgrounds so elegantly, and how do us mere mortals do that?
Okay, so backgrounds is actually, it is relatively straightforward to do on Zoom, as many of you probably know. You have the ability on your settings to enable a virtual background. So on the settings that are on your laptop, when you have the Zoom installed as a client, when you go into your settings, there is a setting that says enable a virtual background. And what that physically does is then when you are on Zoom, as we are now, down the bottom in your toolbar, and I'm conscious that I'm looking down at the toolbar now, not at you, down at the bottom of your toolbar or the side, wherever your toolbar appears, there's a little, next to the video symbol where it says stop video, there's a little inverted arrow. So once you have enabled virtual rooms, you click on choose a virtual background, and a lovely box pops up that checks your green screen and enables you to use a photo. Now just 30 seconds on green screens, because that's quite important here. If you've got ultra modern, super brilliant, incredibly high-tech kit, you can use virtual green screens. You don't need anything physical at all. The rest of us who perhaps haven't quite got to those grips, we actually, now I'm going to destroy the magic for a moment. I do apologize. But if I just click on none, what you see is the most awful looking piece of green muslin behind me. So what Zoom is doing is picking that out and putting the image that I place as the background. I promise you it is relatively straightforward. As far as I'm aware, it is available in all versions, the free versions as well as the paid versions. It's just a case of physically getting a green screen, which is a bit of muslin. It's not expensive. Something you can suspend either from the ceiling on a couple of poles, use virtual backgrounds, job done. And finish off on that. All I've done here is simply taken an image from my workshops that my publishing house, Empower Publishing, have helped me build and create. This is one image that I used in a workshop. I've simply popped into PowerPoint, I've added my logo, I've clicked save as a JPEG, and then transported it into Zoom. Nothing izzy-wizzy, straightforward, I promise you.
Fantastic. That gives real hope to us technophobes. Thank you so much, Jez. A couple of quick fire questions from Lucia. Would you recommend putting a little sticky, you know, one of those dots next to that little bright light to remind you to look to camera? That was question number one. And also, Lucia, any best practice around lighting for us as well, Jez?
I would recommend us, because until you get, it's about establishing norms, isn't it? Those of you who, like me, love reading how the brain works, just like learning to drive a car. It takes you a month to work out how on earth to move that gear stick. And I think it's the same with this. Until you get used to, as a norm, looking at this webcam, you need something to remind you. So why not take Lucia's tip? A sticky, a post-it note, put a great big smiley face and a camera, and just plonk it up the top there so that you are automatically drawn to looking at that camera when you talk. And the second question was on lighting. I couldn't agree more. There's a risk of disappointment, and I can remember doing this myself when first experimenting with Zoom, you know, some time ago, just in an ordinary room. If it was beautiful daylight and the sun was shining at the right angle, all worked perfectly. But often it doesn't. So getting the lighting right. Now I'm going to destroy the magic again here and show you a simple beauty light, a little round light. They're not expensive, very, very simple, can put up on a stand so that you can get it set up for where the lighting works for you in your room. Just play with lighting. Again, it's not expensive kit. You do not have to go for a photographer's hundreds of pounds bit of kit, probably 20 quid, and you've got something that works for you. So you find something that works, and yes, experiment with the lighting, play with it, get it set up so you know it's going to work. Just as you prepare for that room and you tidy it up before the client comes in, getting the lighting right is just as important.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jez. And we're being spoiled here with follow-up questions. Just want to get through the first round of questions, but Karen, we are not forgetting about you. We will deal offline if necessary with your follow-up question there around where we get these pesky images from. Lovely question from Fiona Brennan-Scott. If you're live, you tend to go from face to face, reading expressions. Any tips, Jez, on the fact that essentially, as far as I can see, we can't do that. It's just down camera. So how do we kind of get over ourselves that we can't check in with the very minute nuances of people's faces necessarily when we're doing these kinds of online gigs? Interesting,
isn't it? We need our senses heightened because the old norm is no longer the new norm. Sticking the priority, certainly from my perspective, the priority is how the client is experiencing your engagement. So using that camera is so important to get them engaged. How do you check what they're doing? Well, there's nothing wrong with just occasionally just dropping down to your client's face on screen and just picking things up. But also, you could break up that conversation. The technical sides of Zoom now, not to cover here, but if you were going to look at a document, for example, if you had it loaded up and then shared it, you would actually take the pressure off completely. So you could have something else on screen just while you discussed it. And I'd suggest then it comes down to your listening skills. When you lose one sense or have it diminished, as in you can't take your eyes around the room all the time to pick people up, we have to come back to the human skill of listening, picking up the subtleties in the voice, but we have a technical ability here, the chat room that you've all been on. If you've got a group of people, chat room is a brilliant way just to chuck down. If things are going wrong and everybody's piling in and saying, Jez, sorry, I can't hear you. Or Jez, you're talking about something that's absolutely nothing to do with what we discussed previously in earlier meetings, then they're giving you the words as well. So I think a mixture of other senses, using your ears to listen for the tones of the voice and using the chat technology to support it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And you've partially answered a lovely question from Sarah Butcher, which was around flipping from camera to face. Sarah also has a hunch that your tip around smiling, that's going to show up well on phone as well. Can you just affirm or deny Sarah's postulation there, please, Jez?
Absolutely affirm, Sarah, and lovely to be speaking to you. How many of us have either been on sales courses? I can remember in the bank way back going on incredibly American dominating. Yeah, and as British people, we stood. I can't do that, because what they wanted you to do was stand up at the desk and shout "sail" every time you got something in the bag. I mean, it's just so un-British, isn't it? But if we break that down to its fundamentals, what they were doing was standing up at the desk. Now I'm standing up to talk to you, because if I was sitting down for this, the energy level would be 50–70% down. When we're on our feet, breathing properly, and that's a topic for further workshops. We could spend so much time on your breathing. If I'm standing up and breathing properly, I've got the grounding, and I've got the authority in my voice. If I'm smiling as well on the phone, job done. Try this again. Try this. You're going to be on the phone a lot now, because that's what's happening. Just put a great big grin on your face when you're talking, and it wouldn't surprise me if the conversation just becomes warmer because you remembered to do it. And it's a basic tip from all sales courses. Remember to smile.
Smile and dial. Thanks, Jez. Just want to catch Bryony before she's timed out by the 40 minutes pickle. Bryony says, where do we look when they're talking? So any best practice when we're listening? See if we can catch Bryony before she goes.
Okay. My suggestion, and what I prefer, is even though they are talking, I still prefer to look at the camera. Because what I want is for them, it's all about the client experience. If you're a speaker, it's all about the audience. If we're dealing with clients, it's all about the client experience. If the client is talking to me, I want them to feel that I'm engaged. And if you are talking to me and I'm just sitting looking at something else and looking down at your face, okay, it's marginal, isn't it? But I've just broken the engagement. So my tip would be continue to look at them on screen. Maybe the occasional flip down just to check that they're not disappeared off for a cup of tea. But just check and stay with them through the camera.
Thank you. And a very quick one to wrap. Nicola MacDonald, prompt notes. Any good practice? Because my desk's already looking a little bit busy, just interviewing you and trying to field these questions. What do you do about prompt notes, Mr. Ray?
Okay, my tip, because I'm old-fashioned and I like things written down on things like treasury cards. You can't see it, but my laptop screen at the moment has 6 cards. Oh, actually, I'll show you one, because there's one. I've got 6 cards like this, and I've actually got them blue tacked to the edge of my screen, because I have the memory of a goldfish. Thoughts go straight out. I need my prompts constantly. So I've got these cards blue tacked all around my screen. And if I was on a sales conversation with you, I would probably do something similar so that I wasn't going down to look at my notes and coming back. I want them around me. So cards and blue tack is my suggestion, because I'm old fashioned. There are other modern, you can use on-screen systems as well, but I prefer this.
Thank you, Jez. And we've even got people's own tips coming through, which we will collate, admin will collate. So thank you for the people who have been kind enough to share their tips. It's been a highly collaborative process. Jez, back to you, sir, to wrap up.
Brilliant. So I've really enjoyed this session. I hope you have. This is my norm, working with you in this medium. It would be lovely to work with you again. So what will happen going forward? These type of sessions will continue, so I will keep posting out sessions where we can have nil cost. Let's cover the basics. If you are ready to move forward, then I offer hand-holding session, perhaps an hour a week over a 4-week period with interactive, perhaps just about 12 people in the group, just so that we can work interactively and cover your precise needs at that moment. That is a straightforward workshop. Again, in today's times, just £195 plus VAT. If that interests you, the bit.ly link is actually on the screen that you're looking at the moment. So just copy and paste or write down bit.ly/Jez 4 weeks. And I'm delighted to help you individually in groups on that session. Looking at a bigger picture, if your office, your team would welcome this, then just contact me on LinkedIn. Google Jez Ray. I'm the only one that pops up. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Let's do that anyway. Let's connect on LinkedIn and have a conversation, and let's look at this type of environment. It's what I've been doing with clients over the last year, 18 months, because it's these regular sessions that reinforce the learning and actually get us used to a new norm. And we can practice it in this environment. You can't do this with a client. You can't practice where you're going to look on screen. We can practice in a group room together. And then just to wrap that up completely, as a team, we are going to have, come and join us for lunch session on Zoom. And I'll let my colleague Richard Hagan pick up the threads on making sure you're aware of that. But let me finish by saying it was really lovely to see you today. I just love talking to you, whether it's on screen, on phone. This is a wonderful medium. Why shouldn't we make this the new norm? Why shouldn't we flip that Voldemort effect and actually be the one that clients think of us? Do you know, I enjoyed that conversation against all the others that I talked to. This is going to work. Why shouldn't that be you?
Thanks so much, Jez, for that input and the inspiration behind it as well. And I'm sure, like myself, everyone's got incredible value out of that. I just want to remind everybody the recording of this will go on to Speak Performance online later today, so you'll be able to follow that up. If you've got questions or follow-ups, either comment on Jez's LinkedIn profile or drop him an email. To get ideas for any future freebie events that go out there. That would be fantastic. And like Jez mentioned, you'll see, like, Jez doesn't normally have an entire kind of production crew. This isn't his norm. There's a group of 6 of us who got together in the last week, and we're just working together to support one another and to nurture each other through these interesting times. And we're going to be experimenting with lots and lots of different things. So tomorrow, we're going to have lunch together, and we're going to pop the links up on LinkedIn and Facebook and stuff later on. To why not just take time away from the pandemic and just come and have lunch with some friends. Somebody in the group suggested it could be a little bit like Pebble Mill, and I'm revealing far too much about my age in that. But keeping it real, keeping it fun, keeping it interesting, and somehow touching around business and how we move forward. So that will be tomorrow at 12:30. And if it works and people enjoy it, then we'll do more of it, or we'll try other things. So we just like to invite you along, and please share the information about that. Okay. Again, thanks very much, everybody, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jez.
Pleasure. See you again.
See you. Bye-bye.